You're listening to the British Baseball Podcast. Hello baseball fans, Matthew here with another edition of the British Baseball Podcast. I hope you've got your cup of tea ready and your jammy dodgers lined up, because my guest today was the first player born and raised in Britain to play professional baseball in America. He comes from a very noteworthy baseball family. His grandfather, his uncle and his father were both involved in the British baseball games to some of the highest levels in this sport. And he himself has had a stellar career, playing in many European Championships throughout the 90s, and in 2010, he was very rightly inducted into the British Baseball Hall of Fame. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Mr. Gavin Marshall. Gavin, welcome to the show.
Thanks a lot, Matt. Thanks for having me.
No, thank you for coming on. This is a journey and a conversation that I think many people are very interested in, just because your career, as we just sort of touched on off air, has been really successful, and I think a lot of youth players today can take a lot of inspiration from your journey and learn a lot from you. So before we get into that, do you want to take us back to your humble beginnings and tell us what it's like being part of such an iconic baseball family and growing up around the sport?
Yeah, I mean, I think to strip it right back to the beginning is where I'm different. Is most kids, and especially being in the north, it was either football or rugby league. I was blessed with being born and raised in a baseball family. So from the early ages, even just being able to start walking, I had a baseball glove on my hand as well. So that's where it really all stemmed from, and I think that's why it also helped me when I did get out to America, was just the experiences and from watching baseball from such a young age. My first ever game was when I was 7 years old. So back then in the BBF, they only had two leagues. That was a junior league, which was under 16s, and an adult league, which was over 16s. So as I just said, my first game was 7 years of age. So at 7, I was playing against 16-year-olds. And I always remember my first game. I'll never forget it. My dad had set up a junior team because he saw that I had the interest in baseball, and I was training with the 16-year-olds. And it just came to a point where we was up in a game by about 7 or 8 runs, and he thought this was an opportunity for me to get my first game. I was only a little guy at the time, so I was a little second baseman. And the first hitter that came up to the plate hit a ground ball to my left, and I ran over to field it. Totally missed the ball. It hit my shin and ricocheted over to first base, and we got the out. So that's how my first ever memory, or my first ever baseball experience, was potentially an error but turned into an out. So and from there it just all went rosy.
That's brilliant. I love it. What other memories have you got growing up around the sport?
Lots of really good memories, and even just in the last 5 or 6 years, a guy who I used to look up to has come back to the sport. He's an RAF guy, so he's in good shape. I think when me and him are pitching, and he's an old catcher, we've got a battery of over 80, I think now 90. I don't even know if we've reached the centuries. So. But the memories I've got is from, like you say, from a very young age, from 7, 8, 9 upwards. But it was from, I was playing junior baseball on a Saturday. I was, watching senior baseball on a Sunday. I was also travelling at the time. They had the Scottish Amicable League, which was kind of a sponsored league. And they had senior teams on Saturdays playing each other. So, coach trips to Liverpool, down to Sutton football, all over the country. And it was, when I'm not talking minibuses or cars like we are doing now, it was 52 seaters, and it was really family driven. There was a lot of family names in Hull, and, was competing against each other's. And that's what, was really for me was, I got an early glimpse of what competing, the really trying to compete and almost defend your family name within your hometown, and that was done on the baseball fields. And just like you say, really good memories, some really good players, and who were idols for me. And I think that's important. Like, it's okay to have idols within the major leagues, but you've got to find some idols within your own country, I think, to give yourself something to go for. And for me, it was I've got two cousins who were into my dad's brother's stepsons, Phil Thurston and Brian Thurston. And I remember about 9 going to watch Brian pitch in the junior final, and it was a left-handed pitcher with really good control and good movement. And I watched him strike out about 13 guys, and I was at that age, I was like, I want to be Brian Thurston. And then he had a younger brother, Phil, who we played at the Oval in the final, a 7-inning game, 21 outs. He struck out 20, and the other guy got a ground ball to me. And I'm sure at the time Phil was thinking, miss it, so he could try and get all 21 strikeouts. But these were the kind of guys that, was family members, but also there was my idols, both really, really good pitchers who really paved the way for me. That early kind of mindset of wanting to be somebody like somebody I looked up to.
That's awesome. Do you think that having it in the family, that close family as well, really drove you and spurred you on, like a bit of family competition? Did you ever try to like one up each other, or?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, my dad. I think when I was 14 or 15, I was about to become a pitcher in the senior team, and I actually had the whole Great Britain team behind me on the field. So nearly at that time, all of the whole Mets were pretty much 1-9 was Great Britain starters. And my dad at the time was, he wanted me to learn about pitching. And we actually went to Leeds, and I joined Leeds. And the reason behind it at the time was my dad wanted me to experience what it was like to pitch and not get every ball out, that was hit off you, fielded and just being thrown out of first base. And he wanted me to learn what, failure was. He wanted me to learn about getting into a hole and pitching with runners in scoring positions. And that's probably one bit of advice that I would really say out there to don't always go to the best team. Go to a team where you're gonna actually get to pitch a lot. Go to a team where you're going to get into trouble. Find out how you get out of trouble, and kind of get into those situations which I spoke about it, like you say on Twitter. What you do between like the young ages and all the way up till 18, 19, until your body starts really reaching its physical peak. Try and get as much experience as you can. And that was one of the best things that I ever did, and I didn't quite understand it at the time. But then, when I sat down after about 3 or 4 games, and my dad had said, hey, this is about you learning and to become a pitcher, rather than just somebody who sits back and relies on everybody behind them and the morals. But the point I was trying to get to on that is I actually pitched against the whole Mets, and 4 or 5 of my family were playing on that other team. And you know what? I took some stick that day, took some hammering, and took a couple of little shoulder drops and things like that, because that's where we were. We just competed.
That's amazing, brilliant. That's lovely advice, that as well. Great advice. Who were your biggest influences then? You mentioned your dad quite a bit there.
Yeah, I mean, I was very, very lucky with my dad in regards to, he was my coach. He certainly knew how to wear the different hats. So, I knew when it was coach talking, I knew when it was dad talking. But the other thing was he was a massive friend to me as well, and my best friend. So, that was really good. I think the best thing the relationship between me and my dad is that at a very early age of about 14, he realised he couldn't take me any further. And I think coaches out there should, like you say, it's okay to develop wings on young players, but then let them fly. And that might be with another team. At 14, he realised he couldn't teach me anymore. I was starting to go down the pitching side. He was never a pitcher. And what he did is, from a club's point of view, was we got 2 Americans come over, college players, who just graduated, hadn't got picked up in the draft, and we got them over to come and play for us. Well, that was probably my first year where I just went from an average player to jumping up to a huge gain in velocity, in my mechanics, in control, and that was a huge part. And I think, that is an admirable thing to do when it's your son and things like that. And it was a case of, like you say, well, there's your wings, now go and fly. So, my dad's by far had the most massive impacts on me. And I think that's probably the one thing I would like to try and get out there to, if there's any young players out there. It's important that you behind every great player, there's a team. And that team is the support team that's at home, and you need that. You need that as well. I'll probably get into a little bit later. When you're in America, I got homesick. You have a bad day at the office. The last person's voice you want to hear is your coach or a teammate. You want to hear your mum or your dad. You want that, and that's really a huge part. I think in the interview with Kevin McAdam, he talked about nutrition, weights, all these mechanics and things like that. But the other side of the game, which the youngsters need to be prepared for and ready for, is the mental side of the game. And you've got to have that support mechanism, a team behind you, because they're more important than most other people in the system.
That's brilliant. Yeah, I agree. How old were you when you first went to the European Championships?
Oh gosh.
When I was doing research on it, there's quite a few entries.
Yeah, so I think the first one will have been 1993, because that was after the Barcelona Olympics. So we got to play in the Barcelona Olympic stadiums, which again was a fantastic experience in itself. And I think that was my first ever junior European Championship.
Yeah. Do you want to tell us about it? Because you did a great piece on Grateful to the Game with Drew, and I loved every single one they had on that, even one in Spanish that I didn't even understand. Still, that's amazing. Do you want to talk us through that first experience?
Yeah, I think I said one moment doesn't define you was kind of the key message in there. And at the time, going into Barcelona, I'm just trying to think, I'll have been 16, maybe turning 17. So in actual matter of fact, I was already just pushing for almost a starting job in the senior team. So, I was, there was a lot of expectations out of me, coming out of, expected for me to deliver, certainly at the junior level. And like you say, the first game, it was the opening game of the tournament. The Spanish bus loads of children's schools in and stuff like that. So the stands were absolutely packed, lots of screaming kids, a huge stadium. And, being in England, I'd never experienced this. And went down, everything felt fine. I was warming up, everything felt fine. And took the mound and just couldn't find the home plate. And, it's a bit like Hoosiers, the basketball film where, they make it to the playoffs. He goes there and measures the free throw line and the height of it. Nothing had changed. It was still 60 feet, 6 inches. And all the other elements that can creep into a performance did creep in that day. But as I said, it wasn't the moment that defined me. It was a moment that made me. And, the second part of that story is, which I said to Drew, I said, I'll have to do it, is the reason it defined me, because I think almost, I want to say maybe 10 years later, probably a little less than that, actually, thinking of the age thing, but 8 years or so later, I had an opportunity when I was playing in the Frontier League. We had a closer who played AAA for the Marlins, absolutely fantastic guy, Brian Pattenauer, who was, just a true professional, 6'7", left-handed submarine guy, so you can see why he was in the AAA. And he blew a save at Cook County, was playing Cook County Cougars, And it was round about the 4th of July time, because there was big crowds there for the fireworks. And so the following night, because he'd blown the save, we'd gone into extra innings, and a lot of the relievers had been used. And the coach said to me the following day, "You're closing today." So I'm there all game just praying for a close game. I'm praying for it. So the game goes along, and we got, I think we're certainly up by, I think it was 3-2 going into the 9th inning. So I get the call, but I go down to the bullpen to warm up, and where you warmed up, this was a big stadium, about 15,000 people on a full house, and then where the bullpen was a VIP area with a bar, and so it's the 9th inning, so the people down there were 9 innings deep in beer as well. So they start looking at my number on my jersey, they start getting the roster card, and then they see I'm from Hull, England, so they start shouting all kinds of abuse, slimy, get back to England, all of these type of things. Well, these are the pressure situations I really like. So that started getting me going a little bit. So I started throwing the ball, and I could tell I felt good. Then they're starting to throw some popcorn down and a few hot dogs. So I'm getting revved up a little bit more, and I'm throwing in the bullpen. 9th inning comes along. And they've got their 2, 3, and 4 hitter up, and 3 and 4 was probably responsible for about 30 home runs that year. So good hitters. And they're trying to build the situation up, and they start playing pressure by Queen as I'm coming in. Well, my dad raised me on Queen. So boom, my heartbeat starts going again. So I come into the game, and that moment in Barcelona was what I think got me ready for this situation. And the bottom line is to really go into it. I did the warm-ups. Catcher come out and said, "You're feeling pretty good?" I went, yeah, I'm feeling really good. He knew that. And we went 9 straight fastballs, 3 straight strikeouts. And I always remember it because Parton was a great guy, and it was a bit the Top Gun at the end of Top Gun. And when he came off, he said, "Yo, you could be my wingman anytime." And I just went, no, you can be my wingman anytime. So, but that Barcelona thing, I think, is what got me, 7 or 8 years later, I looked back at that Barcelona incident and thought, that's why it maybe didn't work that night. So.
Do you think then, after that Barcelona incident, was there any sort of doubt in your mind that did you ever think that you would be done with baseball, or was it an instant like, right, I'm getting over this, where did I go wrong, how do I need to get better and improve?
Yeah, tournament baseball is a really, really hard thing, and something that a lot of players aren't used to, because obviously you can go out and have a really bad first game, and you've got to bounce back straight away. For me, it was just a one-off thing. Pressure got to me. Sat down, lucky enough to have my dad on the coaching team that time. So, as well as having the team talk afterwards, Dad, can we go for a drink? And just sat down and just talked about my feelings. I just told him I felt tight. I felt under pressure, and he says, that's fine. That's natural. And that tournament I went on to get a save, and also get the win that got us guaranteed promotion into the Pool A of the juniors, and then I actually come on on the last game to get the save as well. So, it just, like you say, even that tournament, it flipped around and turned on its head, and it was a successful tournament.
That's awesome. So how was it then that you managed to get to the States and sort of get your call up? Was it a call up? What was your journey then from British baseball to American baseball?
So at the time, Major League Baseball International was sending coaches over in the summer, and so it started. I think it was 1995. A guy, I've just actually shared it on Facebook. Ralph Rago, who 61 years of baseball, he's just finally retired. So Ralph had come over, and like you say, I was maybe 16 at the time, and he saw me play. Told him was interested in going out to America, and he said, "Well, I'll come back next year. You go away and work hard, and let's see where you're at a year from now." And it was a little bit of a test, really, I think, from Ralph. That now I was really disappointed because he come back the following year, and what had actually happened was I'd worked really, really hard, but I'd had a massive growth spurt of about 7 or 8 inches. So the first time was going, he was basically based in Leeds, so we're playing Leeds. I'm thinking, oh, Ralph's going to be there. I'll show him what I've got and how I've improved. And I remember going to the field. I got changed. I walking past it, and Ralph's walking the way. So I said, "Oh, hi, Ralph. How are you doing?" He just went, yeah, like that, and he didn't actually recognise me because I'd grown so much.
Yeah.
Then he gets pitching on the mound, and it was like, says, who's this guy? And I was like, well, it's Gavin Marshall, and he was like, oh my God. So Ralph actually invited me to go and live with him for 6 months, and he was coaching at UC Davis at the time. And at the time, the pitching coach there was Matt Vaughan, who was fantastic for me, really helped him in mechanics and developing velocity. The thing with UC Davis was it was a Division II school and a very expensive school, so there was no way I was going to be able to pay for that. So Ralph then, Ralph first opened that door for me, and then the second door he opened for me was he introduced me to Pat Doyle, who was at Delta College, a junior college, which is a bit like a sixth form college over here in England.
Okay.
And I ended up going to play for Pat Doyle for 2 years. Pat was a massive person within my career. He really tapped into my potential, and he really pushed me. And at the end of the 2 years with Pat, I got a scholarship to a Division I school, and then from there, I didn't get picked up. I had a bit of elbow trouble, so I had surgery my senior year, and then I tried out for the Frontier League the following year and got picked up there.
That's amazing. What a journey. So how close to the majors did you actually get?
Well, there's quite. I mean, there was my junior year. I certainly filled out some psychology paperwork for the Braves, and they never called me back after that. So I don't know what the story behind that is actually, Matt. So, and then certainly the night I just spoke about when I closed, that night I was throwing the ball, like you say. If you've seen For the Love of the Game, and where he starts the mechanism and it all goes quiet and he zooms in, that night was one of those nights, and I've only ever had about 6 or 7 days where I knew, I was going to throw the ball hard, and I knew that it was going to go exactly where I wanted it. And I swear, even during, if it was Mark McGuire and Sammy Sosa doing the home run chase, if you get in one of those zones, I would have fancied my chances against both of those guys. But that's why I've got so much respect for the major league players, because over a whole career, I can literally say maybe 7 or 8 times I had this. They get that every night, and that's I tip my hat to them. So, yeah. But yeah, on the night I closed, I threw 9 straight pitches, all fastballs. They knew they were coming, 94 miles an hour, in, out, just locating. And the San Diego Padres cross-checker was there that night and said, I want to see him pitch the next night. I pitched the next night. Because the game, it wasn't a do or die game. I think we were down by 4 or 5. The adrenaline wasn't going through, and I was at 91. And he just said, where's 94? I need 94 every night. So, and that's as cutthroat as it is. It's you can't afford to have a night off. And like you say, I tip my hat to the major leaguers. We played 94 games in 98 days. You get 4 days rest, and that's generally a 15-hour bus ride home. And those major leaguers do it for 162 games, and that's why the mental side of the game, like I said earlier, is so important. You've got to be able, and everything that Kev McAdams said, everything that Will and Liam has said is that you've got to be on point every night. You've got to eat right. You've got to sleep right. You've got to be mentally prepared. It's not something where, you're a fraction off your game, and that can be your end of your career.
Yeah. Knowing what you know now, then, what would you have done differently if you could go back and do it again?
For me, I had a really good fastball and slider. I never ever developed my changeup. My changeup now is probably the best it's ever been. So what I would say to a young pitcher is the changeup takes a lot less stress on your arm. It is by far can be just as devastating as a nasty breaking ball. So I would say it's a bit of advice for pitchers only that, but it would be to just develop, make sure you work on certainly the third pitch, and I would always, if I was to get a young kid now, I would teach them fastball, changeup, and then when they've developed those two, then I'd be looking at a curveball.
There's something I saw on Twitter not too long ago. It's in the last couple of days, and they said if there's something you could change in your sports, what would it be? And they mentioned about making a particular throw illegal until after a certain age because it was just knackering the limbs in young kids. Mm-hmm. Is there anything you sort of experienced? Did you ever sort of put pressure on yourself to try and learn a difficult pitch just to try and be something different to everybody else?
I mean, I've gone through quite a few stages. I had a fastball, slider, and a curveball, a 12-6 curveball. Never had the changeup. Kind of lost. Pat Doyle got hold of me and took my slider from, just maybe just a little bit of a rimple. I'm sat here with my grip now. Took me from maybe a little bit of a rimple, and he made it a really nasty slider. And like you say, I just never took the time to work on the changeup. And you can get so far with two great pitches. I mean, in the major leagues, they tend to have left-handed specialists who come in for left-handers. I ended up, I think, almost developing a right-handed specialist because I could come in and I could literally fastball and slider just strike out big hitters. So I found myself coming in just to get a big slugger, and they'd be like, just break. I want you to go hard and in and slide her away and just snap him in half type thing. And that's what I did. If I'd have had that third pitch, would I have been looking at more starting, a bit of a longevity within my professional career? And it's all a lot of what ifs, but I would certainly say develop that changeup, most important pitch in baseball after your fastball.
That's lovely. Just going back to what you were taught, you mentioned going to the state. You were 17 when you left.
Yes.
Oh, what was going through your head when you made that decision to go, knowing that your family was going to be here and you were going to be over there? Were you sort of a bit nervous, or were you like 17-year-old boy going off to the States?
I think because it is something I wanted to do. I used to play rugby as well, and at about 15, I went into a tackle and I nearly dislocated my shoulder. And it was at that point my dad sat me down, and my dad's a massive rugby fan as well. So, he says, you need to make a decision, one or the other. So about 14, 15, I made the decision of baseball. And if I was going to commit to something, I was going to commit to it. 17, my mum will tell you, got to the terminal, give him a passport. Right, I'll see you later. I'm off. That was it. I was going to basically just go and try and tackle America. Not much pressure because I was just living with a coach. I was working out with the team. And UC Davis, though, the guys really accepted me. I was just another guy, even though I wasn't trying out for a spot. I got to pitch against some really good hitters. I mean, UC Davis, it's a great program with lots of history there. But there was guys there, that just gave me an opportunity to become a better baseball player. And my goal at that time, and I think that's really interesting, is you've got to break it down into little segments. It's okay wanting to be a major league player, but there's a million goals you've got to achieve before you get there. And for me, it was to be the best in my club. Was the first goal, and then to be the best within your area, then the best within your league, and then the best within every league. And so at the time, I was just going out there with one goal of, I want to be the best in Great Britain. I was maybe number 2 starter at the time for the Great Britain national team, and I wasn't happy with number 2. I wanted number 1. So when I went out there, it was merely to say I've got a 6-month opportunity to go out there, become a better baseball player, and come back and see what happens. Where reassess at that point, so that was that was the just the main thing. But yeah, just to get an opportunity like that was just to snatch it off with your own hands and go and jump into it, 2-footed and give everything you've got.
Yeah. Do you find it quite difficult to get settled in and adjust when you got there?
So the first year I went out there, lived with Ralph. He introduced me to the head coach and their family. So that's Phil Swinley, and the Swinleys. They just treated me like there was, one of their own. Ralph lived by himself, so Ralph kind of used to go around there a lot. So I still had that family feel to it. When I went to college, a little bit different, because obviously there is restrictions with coaches and players what you can do. So on your own. It's not easy. It's I went out there a boy and come back a man. I had an apartment. I had to pay bills. I had to set things up and do all these things, and at the same time study and play baseball and pass your classes. And at times it becomes really tough. One of the things that Pat Doyle did with me was he changed my mechanics, and I went from throwing strikes and getting people out to not being able to find the home plate. But it was 3 steps backwards to come 5 forwards, because when I actually continued to work every day on the change in mechanics, by the time I got my control back, I was throwing 3 or 4 miles an hour harder. It's those times, dark periods when you start doubting yourself that, I was lucky to be able to call my mum and dad up and, have those conversations. But no, it's definitely homesick, yes, very much so. And just challenges that mental side of the game even more when you're away from home.
That's awesome. Have you got any favourite clubhouse stories and memories, or travelling stories? Bear in mind it is a family show.
We might have to do that at Battle of Britain over a couple of beers. I was a clubhouse guy. One things I played for a great professional manager, Greg Taggart. He was pretty consistent. He left the clubhouse alone. He didn't come in there, none of this throwing bats and helmets. He recruited people who he knew weren't going on roller coasters, so we're pretty steady all year long. But I was a clubhouse guy. If we took a loss, I'd go in there, be joking around, cracking jokes and stuff like that, just as if we'd won, because it's important to, all the great teams, they lose games, but they only lose 1. They maybe lose 2. They never go on 5 or 6 game losing streaks. So, I was a little bit of a character in the clubhouse, and just keeping guys relaxed. And sometimes, like you say, you sacrifice maybe sometimes your performances to keep other people performing 100%. So I think I did grow Tash out one year for about six or 7 series, so a good time, and I looked like a right plonker. But it's what you do. When we was going a winning streak, they thought it was my Tash, so we just carried on going with that. But
yeah, I did November once, and I looked like Bronson, which was really upsetting, because when I was walking on the street and seeing people crossing over the road to avoid me, I was a lot bigger than I was then. I'm a nice guy. I know these people. Oh yeah, because you look like a psychopath. Yeah, it's funny what we do, isn't it? Just sort of have a bit of a laugh. Do you have any sort of favorite career highlights you want to talk about?
I think I've kind of talked about, like you say, the closing situation. I certainly, the Europeans, 1999. I always had I always wanted to play in the Olympics, and 1999 was qualifying in the qualifying tournament. I'd actually had the surgery that year, so I'd come back to England. I'd recommend that to all players that go out there, is to always come back. Don't forget where you come from, and you can still do a lot of work at home in your own country. So I did all my rehab back here at home. I was pitching to Josh, who you've had on the show previously. And I think I got up to, Croatia was the first game. But what excited me about that tournament is we actually had a really good team. and a couple of overseas pitchers, which we just needed. Not everyone was overseas, and we had the balance between overseas players and the British players, and a lot of players I'd grown up with, your Dave Donaldsons, your Alex Malahoudis, your Nick Carters. So it was a really, really good squad, and I put everything in. I wanted to play in the Olympics, and the one thing that I've never done is pitch against Italy or Holland. Because when you're the number one, you pitch the first game, the tournament, and that way you've got the most rest. And then the next most important game is the crossover game. So I was thinking, if I can get a win and a couple of other guys can get a win, I might actually get the Dutch or the Italians in the crossover game. And I felt good this year. And I went there and pitched. I think they put it down as a 3-hit shutout against Croatia. And that was great. Josh caught a great game, like you say, just sitting at 91, 92, wherever he called for it, he got it. And it's really nice to have a good catcher and a great receiver back there when you come across them. My first son's called Bryce, and that's after a catcher, and we used to catch me. And then unfortunately, we never won another group game. So I ended up pitching the crossover game, which was to keep us in Pool A, and it was against Germany. And that game, I had a perfect game going through the 8th inning, and I always remember it because again, I was throwing the ball exactly where Josh called for it, every pitch. I'm thinking the 8th inning, I get a pitch a guy inside, he gets a broken base hit from me, but Bradley Marcelino, who was born and raised in England, his dad Oscar, and went out to America. He'd come back, really good player, a lot to do with San Diego State, and a lot to do with Great Britain baseball now still with his coaching. He come in and he dove for this ball because he realised the perfect game was on, and he dove for a ball, and I'm not exaggerating, he was like 100 feet short of this ball, but he wanted to lay out to make sure that he couldn't catch it. So they're really good moments, Great Britain wise. And I think a couple of moments that, and this is why I think is really important as well for young players, is a couple of losses, which I learned so much and had the most fun, type thing of competing. So Sac City Junior College is run by Jerry Weinstein and was Pat Doyle's basically arch rival, and he's coach of the Colorado Rockies. What that guy doesn't know about baseball, is he just knows everything. And if you had a resume from, if he was on your resume, Jeremy Weinstein, you'd get a Division I scholarship anywhere. Yeah. That's how much say he had. And I got the ball to start against Sac City, and we ended up losing. I think it was 2-1. But I went toe to toe for him. One of the best games. I really enjoyed it. It was just like every inning, it was just back and forth and so on and so forth. And so I really remember that. And it was a loss, but it was. I walked away from there not happy, but really, really satisfied with what I'd done as a pitcher and how I'd competed and given my team a chance. All the way right till the end, one swing away from, winning the game type thing. And that's, you've got to be able to analyse yourself like that. You can't, some people might overanalyze that and look at it as a negative thing. But if you've given your team a chance to win a game, you've done yourself a good job, and you shouldn't be down on yourself. So I wish more players would do that. And another really good game I remember, and he's an ex-Frontier League guy who pitched in the same league as me, a few years after me though. So, but Doug Grabowski, he pitched for Cambridge, and I think it was the AAA final. Me and him pitched against each other, and I think we both ended up with some like high teens in strikeouts. And I was on the back of a loss then. I think it was maybe 1-0 or 2-1 or something daft like that. But I just remember every time I ran off the mound and he ran on, it was like, keep going. And I was, keep going, let's keep going like this. And we was just pushing each other. And again, it was just, I think that year, I don't know if I'll be speaking out of turn here, but I think the AAA final was probably better than the NBL final, because it really was. Me and Doug Grabowski just went at it. toe for toe and pitch for pitch, and it was, I didn't even realise at the time that I'd pitched in the Frontier League, the same league that I'd pitched in. So it was kind of, in the end, a real good kind of day and a memory.
That's pretty cool. So you made many friends in the baseball community then that were potential rivals?
I think everybody, you have to look at everybody as a rival. I mean, in a positive way, in regards to that, when somebody good come along, that pushed me. So I always would welcome a rival. One guy who always will stand out for me is Martin Godstall. Goddy, he, at a very young age, I got a chance to pitch, or play alongside of him on the Great Britain team. We actually went to France, I think I was 14, playing on the senior team. And I learned a lot from Goddy, because no matter what the score is, if you look at Goddy and his body language, you would think it's a 1-0 ball game, and he's winning. And he just always competed. And so when it's really hard to get inducted into the Hall of Fame when you've got like great people like my dad who coached me, Mike Harold, and then you play alongside these players, and like you say, Martin Godsoll, who maybe played a lot in your career, people who just kind of, Ray Brownlee was a guy who worked with me a lot as well, and there's so many, and then you get inducted into the Hall of Fame before them, and I said to my dad, it's not right, and he just said, no, but you need to just sit down and realise what you achieved. And it wasn't until that point when we sat down one night, and it was like, you got a scholarship. How many American kids wanted that scholarship? You got it. Yeah. How many, baseball contracts? You got one. The fact that you didn't make it all the way to the major leagues, but think about that one, and when you start thinking about it in that type of the population of the United States, and the amount of people that play baseball, and the amount of dreams, and I got to fulfill my dream. So it was only about then where I became comfortable to talk about my achievements, and I think that I was very modest, even though a lot of people who have played against me maybe would be like, modest is not the thing. I was a very much a white line syndrome guy. When I crossed that white line, it was win, and we'll have a drink and a beer about it and talk about it later. But on the field, it was it was a battlefield for me.
That's brilliant. When did you finally come back to Britain to continue playing baseball?
So I think after my second year playing professional, I come back home, and it was a decision I had to make, and it was a case of, do I continue playing, or do I out in the States, or do I start thinking about buying a house, getting a job, pension, and a career. So I made the decision to kind of hang them up then out in the States. And I come back and played a little bit here and there. I'll be honest, every year I come back while I was at college, Hull we had about 8 teams in Hull. And the next year I come back, there was 7, then there was 4, and then there was 3. And it started to just obviously just fade away up north. And that was really hard for me. And when you've played at such a high standard, it was nice to come back and have a bit of fun and work out and work on things to go back to the States. But now it kind of felt like when I sort of like said, right, that's enough now, I'm not going back out there. I lost a little bit of love for the game, and I don't want to be disrespectful to any leagues or anything that are out there, because I just wasn't in a position where I wanted to train and play, and I thought it would be the wrong message to send out there to young kids if they just. So a lot of people were ringing me up, the German leagues as well, and things like that, to just turn up and play on a Sunday, and I was like, no, because that's not what gets you a chance in America. And I was at that point where I'd put my body through hell. I'd been up at 6 o'clock in the morning lifting weights, doing leg days and puking in buckets and things like that. And I didn't want that anymore. And I didn't want to also be that big time player who just showed up and played. I thought that was the wrong message to send to the kids. So I took probably a good 3 or 4 years off.
Yeah.
But then just found the game again. And, it was, at that time, I still play the game, I still play the game hard and in the right way. But as you'll probably see in the Battle for Britain, my body won't allow me to play hard anymore, because as soon as I try and go hard, my groin goes or my back goes. So, so now it is a little bit more tamed. And I'm really looking forward, because obviously 2020 has been a great year for baseball. And I think that's why it's really important that this podcast, I think you're doing a great job, Matt. And, I think this is something that's well overdue. And even if we can't play baseball, let's talk baseball, because, even for itself, that will be some kind of calming mechanism for people out there who are maybe suffering, missing the game and everything that's going on. So I tip my hat to you for doing that. But, the Battle of Britain, I'm really looking forward to, because, I think I said earlier in a previous message, it'll be my 5th decade of spanning over 5 decades now, because I think I first played in the 80s, 90s, so 2002, 10, and this will be my first game in 2020. So I'm looking forward to that. And also, I think, I lost my dad this year, and that was a huge loss. But I'm really looking forward to just, it's going to be strange not having him there, because he's probably been nearly every venue I've ever played at and stuff like that. So I'm just looking forward to maybe just kicking back, having a bit of fun and just playing the game for the love of the game.
Yeah, indeed. And I think it's going to be a great occasion.
Mm-hmm.
I really do. I'm really looking forward to some great looking teams coming down there, and it seems one of those competitions where anything and everything can happen. So with you been in for the game for nearly 4 or 5 decades, what sort of unique challenges have you faced for your time that you don't really see in today's British baseball?
Yeah, it's a really good question, that. I think for me is, like you say, at the junior levels. I used to play in games where we were up on the fence screaming at each other. I mean, it was worse than Bad News Bears. And that, like you say, it's hard. I think one of the questions you ask baseball is that what you ask kind of at the end?
Yeah.
I think I've made it on a couple of your podcasts before. Baseball is the game of life. That is as simple as that. It's not many sports you fail 7 times out of 10 and get paid millions of pounds to do that. So you've got to learn how to handle failure. I think the thing is, as much as I love the taking part and all of that type of approach, we aren't doing our kids any justice. You need to compete. Once you get your A-level grades, you're going to be competing to get into a university. Once you leave university, or if you choose to go straight from high school, you're going to be competing in a job interview. And it's a cruel world. And, like you say, at times baseball can be, and then give up a grand slam on the last pitch and lose a game. And it can be that cruel, and it gets you ready for life. So as much competition in the kids anymore. Yeah. And I think the other thing is, I don't think the kids they see major leaguers, so they see where they're at and they see where they want to be at. What they don't see, and I think more major league clubs to show you the hard work that goes in there. So, the London series, you go out there, you watch Hicks, and a few guys just come straight out, first swing out, 40 minutes off the tee, 20 minutes soft toss, and then the hour in the cage, in below the stadium, and then they come out and start hitting 400, 500 foot bombs. There's a process behind there, and it's a huge process. And I don't think that for me, I grew up, we've just been watching them with the boys over the last few days, my 9 and 10-year-old, the Rocky films, and the Rocky 4 workout, is one of the all-time classics. That was an everyday thing for me.
Yeah.
When I was training to go out to America, snow, 2 foot snow, I was sprinting up hills, trying to develop leg strength and explosion. Didn't have the capacity to play a long toss. So me and my dad would buy a bucket of balls. He would stand at one end of the football field. I'd stand at the other. I'd throw, that's how we would get away with it. A professional body heat. So I was up at 5 o'clock in the morning, in a gym all by myself, motivating myself to get stronger, and do all these things. And that's, I think, what is missing is that competition and the drive, or the understanding of the grind to get to that next level. And this is, so these are some of the things I'm talking about, is just to get you to the next, to be the best in your club, to get you to the like we spoke about earlier, maybe the best in your league. It's a much longer and harder grind when you start thinking about getting to college and to playing professional baseball.
Wow. Do you know that they're doing a director's cut of Rocky 4? They're thinking of cutting about all the Paulie and the robot from it.
Uh-huh.
That would be criminal. But it's Stallone's idea. Oh. Can't tell you what he can and can't do.
Leave it as it is.
Exactly. It's a classic. So would you say now that you are retired, semi-retired, what's the status of Gavin Marshall, the player?
I'm doing a bit of coaching, and I enjoy the coaching side of things as well. You get out of this game what you put into it, and I put a lot into it, and I got a lot out of it, and I think that it's I think I'm at a state now where I just want to just play and just have a bit of fun. So I'm probably not the best guy to have if you want to win a championship or anything like that. But I always enjoy, it's just getting the balance right as you become a dad, and you get a career and things like that. You've got to get the balance right, and sometimes it don't balance in the baseball favor. And I've heard all the podcasts and British baseball, people from the north trying to play in the NBL, and it's just not feasible. And we do need to. It needs to be addressed. And I think personally, and this is only a personal opinion, is you take the Northern League and you take the Southern Leagues, and you've got exactly what the major leagues have. You've got a National League and you've got an American League. I think they should just keep it that way. Let's not do any interleague playing. Let's have the winner of that league playing a 5-game, 7-game series of that, over 2 or 3 weekends. Make it a British World Series. And do you know what? If the South are winning the North by 10, 15 runs, every game in that 7-game series, and the sweeping is 4-0, that's going to push the team naturally. And so then all of a sudden it might be 4-1. Then it might be 4-2, and then all of a sudden that starts creeping up. But I think we shouldn't fight, we've got a natural divide, and I think we should use that into our advantage. I think we spoke about the new strategy from the BBF is to try and get more people playing, and that is exactly right. And I go to the park runs every Saturday, and if we can do that, and I think that'll be great for young kids, because what I'm trying to say, my reason I think I did so well out in the States was my experience and the amount of experience I had of playing games. Now, if we can offer more pickup games here, there, and everywhere all over the country, I would be telling kids, get out there and just play. It doesn't matter if it's a poor standard or it's an experience, and sometimes from a poor per game. You can learn so much as well.
Yeah.
You know, I've played at all levels in the North, single A, double A, and triple A, and you know, I'm not going to lie. Sometimes I've still learned things in the single A games. You know, as a player who's been playing for 36 years.
That's awesome. That's a really interesting concept as well, with the AL and NL comparisons. That's quite interesting. So what kind of legacy do you want to leave when it's finally cleats up?
I think probably the legacy that I'll leave behind anyway is it's already kind of paved out the way. Is, you know, it's as you said at the beginning, you know, the first, you know, British born, you know, to play professional baseball. I think that legacy is just that it can be done. You know, I've seen so many so much talent coming out of Great Britain, and we've got more and more kids going over there. And now I think it's about trying to potentially, like even just using this podcast, is getting them to understand, you know, the grind of the journey. You know, because if you understand what the journey is going to be like, it can, you know, almost make it a little bit easier, or you know what to expect, and just try and do more. I mean, like you say, I think. At the time when I come back from America, I was actually thinking of there was talks of me working for, I don't know if at the time if it was BBF or BSUK, and me personally just travelling around and playing for different teams, because one of the things was if you can increase the pitching in the country, then the hitters will get better. So, you know, potentially one week pitching for you know, the Trojans against, you know, potentially the whole team, and then the following week I could be pitching for the whole team and facing, you know, Cartmel, and then that way everybody's seeing good pitching week in, week out, and that was even up and down the country. For whatever reason, that never come about, but you know, I think that's you know, what we've got to. The legacy that I'd like to see is just more and more people pushing for those honours, you know, over in the States, and I think we're still not far off. You know, I was the first to go out there, and then Alex Malahudis and Will followed me. Nick Carter come out there, and, you know, at the moment, you know, we've got Miles Jansen out there. There's another guy here in Hull who's trying to get out there, Josh Jackson, and because they haven't been part of the GB academies and that for a year or two, I don't know if there is any others out there at the moment, but you know, I always say to every one of them that go out there, if you know, put me on Facebook or whatever, and if you want to chat, because I know sometimes you don't want to chat to your mum and dad. You know, you got to have those different avenues, and I think, I think for me, I think the legacy, I think, is already there. The Marshall name, whether that'll continue, I don't know. My boys do play, but there's no junior baseball in the North, and that's got to change. So I suppose if I did hang them up, maybe the legacy might start where I decide to turn a little bit of a turn towards junior baseball in the North.
Yeah, I was going to ask you if your boys played. What do you think then we can do as a British baseball community to try and drive participation and get more youth teams started, get the kids involved?
Yeah, I mean, it's, for me, the biggest success we've ever had with getting kids involved. And if anybody out there is thinking about setting up a junior program, and I'm going back to, you've got multiple reasons why you should do this. If you've got any good players in your club that can benefit from this, and also you potentially getting your next lot of baseball players. But I would look at trying to get an American player to come over. Believe it or not, I can, even now, with everything that I've achieved, I can tell a kid to do something, but somebody with an American accent can come along and then they'll do it. The American accent they love, and it gets kids. The important thing is to get the kids down there, and we had a couple of twins come over a while back ago, and it kicked it up again a notch in Hull. We took them into schools. We got school kids coming down, then coached them for a year, and that is probably where I'd like to see the focus on. And I think the new strategy talks about it a little bit about support, because when that American goes home, we've got to be able to keep them enthusiastic and keep it going. But there's a few reasons why a club can consider it. One, the Americans love Europe, so a lot of the time you can find players who will pay for their own flight. You just need somebody who will put them up. Your club will benefit from it. Your better players at the club will benefit from it, and you could potentially utilise them and say, well, we can feed you, put you up, and give you a little bit of, maybe fun money. If you coach, go into schools and coach and take the junior program for a summer. And also, whoever helps out at the junior program will be learning every day while they're alongside of them. So I would say that is a key thing. I think, to maybe, if you're really serious about maybe setting up a junior program, is get some help. You need help.
Yeah, lovely, thank you. Finally, one last two last questions from me. You already stole the baseballers one from me, so I don't need to ask that later. What is it that you miss about playing baseball?
I mean, for me, it's just I've always been team orientated type of guy. I'm actually in the fire service now, and I don't think there's any. There was a definite reason why I joined that job. It was still like you feel part of a team. You need a practical joker to keep your team alive and kind of steady when times are bad. So. I just love. I just the other day I went to the field. I set up the pitching machine. The boys were feeding it. I was taking some ground balls, some fly balls. I just love going to the field. Throwing in some sunflower seeds, having a game of catch. So I don't know. I feel at ease. You said you got a little bit stressed about doing these kind of interviews and stuff like that. If we were on a field, it'd probably be a lot different. And so that's what it can do. It can really just, like you say, calm you down. And for me, it's that quiet place to go to. That place where sometimes if you got to sort things out, the ball field's a great place to go do it.
That's just give me an idea of that. To get me GoPro, put me headgear on, and do interviews at the field and play catch while you're doing interviews. We'd probably be looking at the floor trying to find the ball. Brilliant. That's been awesome. Gavin, cheers for letting me have this opportunity to grill you on some bits. It's been quite a popular thing. When I mentioned I was doing this interview, there's been a lot of people very interested to hear some more of your story. So to all those that are listening, I hope that I've done you all justice. This has been a right for me. And now I'm going to hand you over to the listeners, the mercy of the listening community. The listening community. What am I talking about? That's getting cut. So listeners' questions. First one comes in. We've got a Liverpool Trojan double header. Comes from David Martin Bayers, who asked, having played professional ball in the States, do you think we're likely to see any more pro ball players that have learned the game in the UK? And if so, what would it take?
Yeah, I think we've covered that a little bit, haven't we? Yes, I do think we'll see some more professional baseball players come from the UK. I think if I could come now with my work ethics and my love and passion of the game, and had YouTube and all of those type of things, to all them training things, I would love to be 18 again. But yeah, I mean, I think Josh Chetwynd kind of touched on it again. It's the hard work. You've got to put that hard work in. And it's, I've mentioned the grind quite a few times. It's being prepared for that. But I see kids now, they get into the lifting and that a lot earlier. We're seeing a lot more major league bodies. I know Moneyball started to go away from body types and things like that. But I think we're well in the going in the right direction to seeing somebody, I think, crack it. And I just think that maybe a little podcast like this, telling them they've got to work hard, get that long toss in. I think there's more chance of a pitcher than position players, because until we're seeing 90 miles an hour regular in our game, in our country, it's going to be a bigger jump. With pitchers, you can still get people out with 82, 83, and then you get them into a system, and then they can learn that system, and then they can increase the ball velocity. And just like me, like you say, when I first went out there, I was sitting at about 83 miles an hour, but could throw strikes and could still get people out. So, and it just built from there. So, just keep going at it and just work hard. The way I looked at it was, every time I worked out, I was then saying, is there anybody out there working harder than me? And if there was, I was up in my game the next workout. Yeah. And that's the way you've got to look at it. If you're sat at home all day, doing whatever, whether it's, whether you're just playing on games, or whether you're, just reading or anything like that, you've got to ask, is there somebody out there who's doing more baseball than I'm doing? And if so, they're getting better. So, you're gradually slipping down that. Make sure you're at the top, and keep working hard to stay at the top.
That's cracking. What change did you make then from being able to throw from 83 into the 90s? What did you change about your regime?
So it's for me, it would be one, just being able to throw every day when you was out in the States. That made a massive difference. I would say that in itself, throwing every day, is going to get you a couple of miles an hour. Your mechanics, believe it or not, all your power comes from, like you say, for me, I feel it's your backside and it's your back leg. So finding out a little bit about weights and working those out, your legs, but your mechanics, if you've got good mechanics, I think I'll always be able to pick up a ball and throw it pretty hard because of the mechanics that are engraved on me. And you don't even need to be throwing a baseball to be working on your mechanics. So, just doing it in front of a mirror. If you go out and do your long toss and you play catch every day, you can still come back and look at yourself in a mirror, make sure your front side's staying on. The less you do with your front side, the more power you'll get. It's a bit hard to, I'm quite a physical person to show and explain that, but yeah, the less you do with your front side, the more you'll get out your backside, and your backside is where your power's at. So be quiet with that front side. And that's the same with hitting as well.
Yeah, noted. Wrote it down. In Blease, sometime around the year 2000, the rules for playoff eligibility in British baseball were changed. This rule is still referred to by many as the Marshall Rule. Can you tell us how this came about?
Yes, I can. I think it was 2002. Basically, what was it? I pitched 1 year professional baseball. I'd come back home, and before I went back out for spring training the second year, I wanted to get in shape a little bit. So I signed with Brighton Buccaneers. I signed with Brighton Buccaneers because they were, at the time, I would think the NBL, if it was called that then, it was probably the best league. They had a lot of overseas players, so some decent hitters. And I thought I could go and pitch for them. Reason I chose them, got a lot of respect for Craig Savage, done a lot for baseball, massive things he did down there at Brighton. But yeah, they had Dave Donaldson, good friend of mine from GB Juniors, Alex Malahoudis, Nick Carter, Will Linton was just coming on the scenes in those days. And I'd actually, a good friend of mine, John Foster, who I played with at college, come over for a year, who ended up pitching at Brighton. So we've got good ties and relationships. So I said I'd signed for Brighton and was going to go down there and get some innings in, get some working out done before flying back out for spring training. At the time, about January or February time, my training wasn't going the way I wanted, and I knew I wasn't where I should be at. So I decided to fly out to California and meet up with Pat Doyle and do some training. And I think at the time, Liam Carroll was out there, so I went and stayed with Liam, and I just got some training in, got some throwing done with some American lads, got to pitch in some scrimmages to get myself ready for spring training. My season was just coming to an end, and the Final Four was going on in England. The Final Four got rained out, so it got pushed back a week. So I was in my last couple of weeks of my season. The rain out date got rained out, and then before you knew it, the next day that was scheduled, I was flying back into the country about 2 days prior to it. So Craig Savage had rang me up and said, "Do you fancy pitching?" So I says, "Well, can I?" And he says, "Yeah, there's no rules. You registered with us at the start of the season. You're a Brighton Buccaneer, and you still are a Brighton Buccaneer." So after that, I think I come back. I can't remember the exact. I think I struck out 13 or something like that. We won 1-0 or something daft like that. I did make I probably did. I think it was Windsor Bears at the time. John Boyd and his team, a really good team as well. Probably felt a little bit cheated, because of me turning up and pitching. So they changed the rule that you had to play in 25% of the games. So that's where that comes from. So yeah, martial law, if you want to call it that. But
Martial law.
I blame it all on the English weather.
Yeah, if we had better weather, it'd never been in that situation. That's
exactly.
Brilliant. Great story. John Carter, seeing as you played pro ball around the same time that Bill Durham was made, were there any similarities in your own paths?
Oh, Bull Durham. Yeah, I'll probably say yes, there was, but this is a family show, so I think it is an 18 Bull Durham. I'll discuss them further with John at the Battle of Britain.
Excellent. Willington has asked a couple of parking questions. He usually does. What
Yeah,
advice would you give to any young player who wishes to reach their full potential?
Yeah. I think we've touched on it a little bit. Set yourself daily goals. Make sure you have that big goal of playing in the major leagues. I always say this as well: when you set a goal, set the biggest one you can do. In regards to, don't just be happy with playing at college baseball. Your final goal needs to be Game 7 World Series type thing. But it's about setting those little goals. You are going to have to achieve millions of goals to get to that goal, and that goals are. It needs to be just as simple as I'm getting up and getting at it tomorrow. That's a goal. I'm going to get up at 6. I'm going to go hit them streets for an hour. I'd recommend setting little things like that day by day, week by week, and as I said before, become the best pitcher on your club, then become the best pitcher within the league, and just slowly build up. And I think with that, and just be honest with yourself. I've already stated it, but I got a lot out of the game, but it's because of what I put into it. So if you want to succeed, you've got to put the time, the effort, like say Josh Shetland, the grit and the sweat and the hard work. It's all got to be in there. There's no pot noodle Major League Baseball. Just add water.
No, that's a great analogy. I like it. Did you ever have to sacrifice anything for baseball?
What is it? I mean, depends on how you look at this. I had a great opportunity to go out to America at 17 years of age, 8 years out there. Got a college degree while I was out there, and the degree is worth, probably $100,000, $1,000. A couple of universities I went to were 40,000 a year schooling fees, which I never paid for. I didn't go on guys' holidays with all my mates from school. Is that a sacrifice that was well worth making? Yes, it was. You sacrifice, sometimes you're eating, you're drinking, and all of those type of things, but for me, it's well worth the sacrifice, and you'll kind of know. So I guess at the age of 15, I wrote a poem, and I can't remember it off the top of my head, but it all started with a bat and a ball, the wonderful game that starts in the fall. For me, it started when I was 4 years old. I hope I'm playing until I'm bald. And then it goes on about, I play this game for the love of the glory. When I picture Comiskey, that'll be some story. Picture versus battle, it's like a boxing bout. When I pitch, I'm going to strike you out. That wasn't, at 15 years of age, that was a mission statement more than anything else. You'll know if you want to do it. And if you want to do it, you owe it to yourself to just put everything in and potentially make some sacrifices.
Yeah. If that's not tattooed,
I'll try and get you a copy of that poem.
Yeah, that'd be top. If you were king of British baseball, what changes would you make right away, and what would you try and get done in 5 years to really move the sport forward? King.
Who's that come from?
That's Will again. Another Will Hinton one.
Is it?
I swear he should just do his podcast for me. His questions are miles better than mine.
Listen, I mean, the game, I could sit here and I could compare the game, from when I played it and so all that. The game's where it's at, and the only thing I care about is how we get it to the next level. There's politics out there. There's politics in Major League Baseball, and there always will be. I think for me, if I could change anything, I think a little bit what we spoke about, just naturally drive that competition. So use the North and the South divide to make that realistic World Series. You know what? We're all chasing. We all want to be Major League Baseball players. So why not, set up our governing body, our league, as like we just stated, like the actual Major League setup. So I do that. I think that would naturally create some competition, between the two. We've got to use it. Use the North-South divide. To be fair, I just love playing baseball, so that doesn't really matter. I think if I was the king, wow. Just knowing what I've achieved more coaching lately is, a few years back, we had an autistic lad who come and joined the club. I think Ian Blees has mentioned I had a very young Scorpions team at one point. And this kid asked about baseball. He actually came to practice 4 times before he actually left the car in the parking lot and come over to the field. So he managed to make it to the field 3 times and he wouldn't come out. And he finally come out, and this is a kid who his mum and dad were so grateful for him coming out of his shell. He was accepted by all the other lads on the team that are similar ages. And that, for me, if I could be king, I would try and get more people to invest in the grassroots of baseball, because it is a really, really rewarding game. Like I said, it's the game of life. It gets people ready for life. It gave that kid the confidence to go on to college. It gave that kid the confidence to get a job. And those type of things you don't get from football, from some of these other sports that are out there. We're a minority sport who pretty much funds ourselves. Most clubs are funding themselves, and you know what? You can get so much out of this sport, because it doesn't matter. It's what I've found is that your best football players and rugby players, when they come down to baseball, they're the mediocre ones, and your mediocre rugby player and your mediocre football player are your best baseball players, and it just levels that field out. And I'm a trade unionist, so I believe in equalities, and I believe baseball is probably the most equality game that is out there. There is not a body type that we will not accept. There is not, a body type that cannot play this game of baseball. It's all about hand-eye coordination. And I played rugby. I played rugby when I come back from America as well. I still, when I play baseball, I ache in places I've never ever ached before. So it's different muscle types, and it's, I just find it such a rewarding game, and I can't believe that companies don't invest money in it, because if they actually come down, and a bit like yourself, Matt, you come down to a game, or you found baseball and you fall in love with it, and I think that there's a lot of money wasted in sports, and it's a shame that some of that money cannot come our way, because I think that the baseball community would certainly maximise any kind of small donations that they got from local companies or anything, to make great fields, to make great facilities, and to continue giving people an opportunity to achieve in life.
Yeah. So Will's next question. He said, not a lot of pitchers know or have been taught how to get ready for a start. Please can you describe your pre-game routine, stretching, long toss, and bullpen routine, including your timings and when you get going?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So one of the things that you do need in your regimen is a routine. At a very young age, I started doing a diary of what I would eat on a certain day, what I would work out on, and then I would kind of grade my bullpens to say, I felt 7 there, I felt 8, I felt 9, and so then that, even what Kevin was talking about, your nutrition and things like that, is you've got to start giving yourself the best opportunity to perform to the best level you can on every given day. So it starts way before that. For me, on a game day, starting about an hour before the game. It's pretty a little bit more different out in the States. You've got clubhouses and things like that, but a couple of managers used to let the starters just hang out at home until they wanted to come. For me, though, it was suited and booted. An hour before the game, I'd just start doing some polls, about 6 polls, so foul pole to foul pole, 6 of those, just to get the blood flowing. Then I'd go into quite an intense stretching routine, which involved, from literally toe all the way up to your head. Stretching your back all the way through there, and that was assisted with the trainer. Not every pitcher utilised that, so like you say, when you've got facilities there, utilise them, play with them, experiment them, and try and get the most out of them. So I'd get a trainer, and they would help me and assist and push that body an extra inch or 2 on a stretch. And that was really important, because by the end of that, you did feel really good. I'd then go and, just because of the stretching out, just go and do a couple more pulls. And then what I would do is, to get the blood really pumping and get a bit of a sweat on it, I'd just go into 10 just short 90-foot sprints. From there, I would then pick up the ball, and it would be a full throwing routine, which starts off on your knees. Just working on muscle memory and getting your elbow and your arm in the right place. And that's one thing that I guess I'm seeing less and less of in the British game, probably more at the club levels, and not certainly in the GB and the academy side of things, because I know what great things Liam and Will are achieving there. And even like you say, J-Rod and Spence is now on. It's got a great setup there. But you've got to warm up. You've got to tell your arm to get in the right place. So it'd be 15, 20 throws on my knees, back up a little bit, 15, 20 throws on my one knee up, back up a little bit more. Now just feet facing, so just going to be twisting the hips a little bit, 15, 20, getting the back involved in it. So far I'm getting my arm warmed up. Now I'm starting to bring my back into it. Then I go back a little bit further, 15, 20 in the power position. Now I'm just starting to get a little bit of weight shift coming into my throwing. Back up a little bit further, 15 to 20. Now, we're going with a step and a throw, so I'm now getting my legs into it. So just slowly bringing them all in. I would go long toss, and I used to go quite a long distance. And the reason behind that is, in any sport, athletes will do what they've got to do to get an advantage. And you know what? When they look out there and they see you throwing the ball, 300 feet on a line, straight away, I think I already had a couple of hitters' numbers for that day. So it wasn't a case of I don't know if it was good for me or it was bad for me, but it gave me some edge, thinking that I'm throwing that ball hard, and I've got a few guys looking at me thinking, God, he's got a good arm. So that's psychological. And then I'd bring it right back down to 90 feet. At 90 feet, I'd start letting some go really hard now. And that was to try and feel the extension, because at 90 feet, you're still out in front. And I'd also just throw some change-ups at 90 feet, because you've got to get used to trying to throw the change-up through the catcher, not to the catcher. Get back to 60 feet, 6 inches, let a couple go, and then I'd go off the mound. So off the mound, I'd go 5 fastballs away, 5 fastballs in, 5 change-ups down the middle, 5 breaking balls down the middle, 5 change-ups away, 5 change-ups in, 5 fastballs away, 5 fastballs in, 5 change-ups, and 5 curveballs, all just down the middle, off speed just to get a feel. Then I'd go from the stretch. I would recommend to more and more pitchers do more and more work from the stretch, because if you give up a home run from your full wind-up, it's only 1 run. If you give up one from the stretch, you're looking at 2, 3, or 4. So I always do a lot from the stretch. After becoming a reliever professionally, I actually don't even pitch from the wind-up anymore. So, but once I do the stretch, I do 5 fastballs away, 5 fastballs in, 5 change-up, 5 curveballs. So what I've done now, I'm at about 80 pitches, and this is all about 80%. I'm not going full lever. And then I would just finish with 3 batters. So I would just kind of do 1 inning. And at that point, then I would start kicking into the 100%, and I would start locating. My catcher would start calling the change-ups and the slider, curveball in the location. So I should have a good feel for it. And that was my routine. Took me an hour right up to literally, because in America, it wasn't my country at the time. And they always play the national anthem. I always used to stay in the bullpen for the national anthem. And I don't know if that offended anyone. It was more out of respect, really, that, I stayed in the bullpen and let them have their moment. But I always obviously respected the national anthem. But it was kind of something I just got into, and maybe that was, I don't know if that was the right thing or the wrong thing, but I always kind of liked coming in from the bullpen rather than coming out of the dugout. So maybe I was always meant to be a reliever or a closer. Maybe that was the reason it was already in my head. Awesome. So I hope that helps.
Yeah, some great takeaways there. Some great takeaways. Last one, and then your evening is all yours. Neil Davis and I suppose Mitch Cross as well, both kind of competing for who was going to ask the question first. What are your thoughts on polls?
So this is a bit of an inside joke. Obviously, the Battle of Britain, I'm playing for the Northern Knights. Neil Davis is taking the reins this year of the Northern Knights. We've got a bit of a chat going group at the moment, trying to sort out availability and things like that. And he constantly is doing a poll in there. And obviously, like I said earlier, trade union and believing in democracy. I said, hang on a minute, we didn't do a poll about having polls. So every time he puts a poll up, I always then put another one up. Did we have a poll to see if we wanted this poll? So it's a little bit of an inside joke there. But as when you said earlier, what do you love about baseball? It's characters as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
Some great characters.
Just talking about it, there's not going to be any Southern teams trying to pull the martial law, are they, at the last minute? Like, where's Gavin going? Should be getting ready? And then they go, oh, he must be still at the hotel, and they walk out and you're warming up for the Southern All-Stars.
Well, I'm open to offers, Matt. At the moment, if anyone offered me double what the Northern Knights, which is 0, I'm up for it.
You're here first, folks. Is a gun for hire. You can have him a packet of jelly beans and a. A few beers is yours. Gavin, this has been brilliant. I've loved every minute of it. Thank you so much for your time and for coming on the show and for your support. And also, I never got to thank you for your kind words as well throughout the show. It's been superb. Loved every minute of it. I always like to leave the last word open to the guest. So, Gavin, the floor is all yours. Any shout outs, any parting advice, anything you want to say?
No, I mean, I just like to, like you say, thank you again, Matt, for inviting me on this. I'm really, really humbled. Like you say, I do have a story, and it is a pretty good one, and I do like sharing it. And you know, I think that more people should obviously get involved in the game. And I tell you, you spoke to Kevin McAdam, and you remind me a lot of him in regards to he come along in like you say the early 90s in Hull, and he wasn't the greatest of baseball players. He loved baseball, he loved the Boston Red Sox, but he took Hull at the time to a different level, and with his what he can do achieve off the field. We hosted the European Championships. You know, we've hosted 3 or 4 in Hull, all on the back of Kevin. And I think even if you are listening to this podcast and you love the sport, please get yourself down to a club that's nearest to you. Even if you don't think you've got any athletic ability or anything like that, you can achieve so much for this sport. Even when you don't even necessarily know the game or can play the game, but you know there's plenty of business people out there who could probably help a lot of clubs and maybe push them to that next level. And the more clubs that get to that next level as a country, that's when we will start seeing more players making it over in the major leagues. So keep doing what you're doing, Matt. I think it's great. Like I said earlier, some really weird times at the moment with COVID and stuff like that, and no matter what happens, when I speak baseball, it always puts a smile on my face. So you've made my day by having me, so thanks a lot, Matt.
Oh, well, funnily enough, like listening to people talking about baseball puts a smile on my face. So you like talking about how I listen to it? Match made in heaven. Gavin, this has been the best, and I wish you all the best luck down the Battle of Britain, and hopefully we'll catch up over a J2O or a fizzy water down there too. Take it easy, my friend.
Take care, Matt. Take care. Thanks for having us.